So in session 2 of the Law of One, the raw material, they talk mostly about crystals as well as the pyramids. At the beginning of the session, Ra shares that about 11,000 years ago they came to Egypt to teach the Egyptians how to heal themselves as well as the planet. So they shared crystal technology as well as help build the pyramids, which were intended to be used for that purpose. They go on to mention that this initial use was distorted because the Egyptians were mainly using it for people in power and were not using it to help anybody else as well as to help the planet. He also explains that a second group came to South America around the same time and that they managed to stay a while longer than Ra did in Egypt, simply because of the distortions. However, they did not completely leave the planet. They left from the physical form, but they remained with us because of a sense of duty. Now, the duty was related to their feeling of, I guess, responsibility for having taught and shared this technology with us that was being used incorrectly, as well as the teachings of the Law of One that were also being distorted. And so they felt a sense of needing to help humanity get onto the right path again. They then explained that they contacted a pharaoh called Amun, who then later changed his name to Aten, who was a wanderer. In later sessions, they will talk more in depth about what a wanderer is, but basically, Jesus was also a wanderer according to them. Aten then decreed the Law of One, but few accepted it, and they speak about how priests were speaking this Law of One, but that they weren't actually seeking this Law of One. And that after Aten had died, the Law of One was forgotten about, and the many gods that were revered or celebrated in their beliefs returned. I think this is so clear in our current society, how all our priests and any kind of religious leaders are doing so from text, from intellect, but not from direct experience or knowledge, gnosis, understanding. And so, because of that, the teachings are distorted, which is why we have so many different denominations in Christianity, is the understanding of these teachings are being brought through this colored lens, as they would say in yoga, that it is not truth, essentially. It is the interpretation through whoever is bringing this message about, through their previous experience, through their conditioned selves. So the questioner goes on to ask Ra about crystal healing. And Ra explains that crystals can be used for different purposes. They can work on the energies coming into the spiritual body. They can work on the distortions from spirit to mind, as well as balancing distortions from mind to body. He also explains that the diamond or the ruby can be used by a purified channel who's filled with love light for almost any application, but that it takes a lot of work to get to that, the point of being able to do that. He explains that all of the crystals or the crystal healings are being charged through purified channels. In other words, purified beings that are using their mind, body, spirit complex as humans. And that without relative crystallization, which is basically how clear and undistorted the channel is to reflect intelligent infinity or truth, that the healer working with the crystal will not be able to properly use the crystal. And so basically they need to be purified as individual vessels and consciousnesses in order to gain the maximum and correct use of the crystal that's being used. They explain that other impacting factors are things like the alignment with the energy fields of the planet, as well as cosmic streamings which enter the planet. So my experience with crystals is quite limited. I remember a few years ago learning a little bit about it, this before my awakening, and placing certain crystals around my room with specific intentions that I had learned very much on the surface. Things like crystals for protection and crystals for expanding the heart space, for love and creating a loving environment. It was only after my awakening that I started to learn about the depth, especially through the Law of One, the depth and the purpose of use of crystals. I've never, still up until today, felt drawn toward working with them. However, I do sometimes wear like chakra stones with the intention of balancing and aligning, as well as protection. I do carry citrine around with me in my bag, also with the purpose of aligning my ego, or keeping my ego balanced. I also carry obsidian with me in my bag, also for protection. And sometimes I will use crystals in my Reiki healing sessions, either keeping them close by when I'm working on a client, if I kind of get the feeling or intuit into what they might need in that session, I might keep a specific crystal with me, or a specific set of crystals with me, geared toward that healing. Sometimes I will sleep with them beside my bed. But other than that, I haven't gone into the deeper use. And generally, they're kind of an additional tool, my vessel being the primary tool for any work that I'm doing, any spiritual or energetic work that I do. So moving on, the questioner asks about pyramids and the purpose of the pyramids, as well as if Ra had built them. Ra explains that they had built them using the forces of One, which they give more detail about in later sessions. They go on to explain why, the first reason being that they wanted a proper place for purification for initiates to become clear channels for the Law of One. And they also explain that they were built for these initiates to help heal others as well as to heal the planets. He goes on to talk about how the pyramids were charged by the crystals as well as charged by the initiates, and were designed to balance the incoming energy of basically the one creator with the many mind, body, spirit complex distortions. They also explain that the pyramids were built to complete, or to help complete, a ring of crystal bearing structures on the Earth's surface. I don't know if they go deeper into what crystal bearing structures are. I can't remember that far into the text. However, I do know that there are other pyramids built in, for example, South America as well as in China. Whether they are referring to these other pyramids as being crystal bearing structures, or if it is those as well as other crystal bearing structures that do not take the form of a pyramid, for example. There are documentaries that talk about the relationship between these pyramids. So if you want to dive a little bit more into that, you can. The text, I also can't remember if the text, the law of one, goes into the relationship between them. But if you want to go into that, you can look for these documentaries. I can't direct you specifically to any single documentary. I just remember that on Gaia.com, they do have more information on that relationship. At the end, Ra talks about the best way to take care of the instrument. He refers to Kala as the instrument, so the instrument for channeling this mind, body, spirit complex. And he says that to dress her in a white robe would help. And this is not just for the care for her physical vessel, it is also to help her channel this narrow band vibration that Ra explains they send through more clearly. He explains that the direction of the head should be placed at 20 degrees north by northeast, and if you want to go more into all the other placements of, for example, the white chalice being placed at the head, the Bible, the white candle, the incense, you can have a look at session 2. There are also pictures on the website that will give you a visual representation of how everything is placed around Kala. Otherwise, I will leave it at that for session 2, and I hope you found this interesting, and yeah, so have a cool day, and I will see you guys on session 3.